When I was in Mevaseret, about 24 years ago, there was a Rav who sat in the front of the Beis Medrash. He looked like an old European Rav with a long frock and a Hamburg, and he always had a smile on his face. I was stricken by the sight of him from the very beginning of my time there. And my roommate and Chavrusa that year, Moshe Tzvi Weinberg, said to me that he noticed Rav Sinai walks home every night from the Beis Medrash by himself after Mariv, which is about a 3-minute walk. And he said we should accompany Rav Sinai home. We'll walk him and we'll ask him a question every night. And Rav Moshe Tzvi at the time didn't speak Hebrew, so I was left to do all the speaking. And that's what we did. We walked him home every night. We made up the silliest questions that we could think of, just to have something to say to him. And then at a certain point in time, Rav Tzvi was busy with other things, and it just became me and Rav Sinai every night walking home. And at the end of the year, he asked me if I'd like to come to his house for a meal in Shavuos, which I accepted, and he told me Tavi Chaver. I'm pretty sure I brought Rav Moshe Tzvi with me for that meal. And in the beginning of my Shana Bet, I figured at the end of Shana Aleph at Shavuos time, he invited me for a meal. He probably would like it if I would come for a meal again on Shabbos. So I asked him the first week of Yeshiva, can I come for a meal on Shabbos? And he told me, Ken, Tavi Chaver. And I did. And then the next week, I remembered that the previous week I had gone to Rav Sinai for Shabbos for a meal, and I thought it would be nice if maybe he would want to have me again. So I asked him, Harav, Ifshar Lagia, and he told me, Ken, Tavi Chaver. And then the third week, I was like, okay, we're almost at a chazaka here we go. Harav, Ifshar Lagia, Tavi Chaver. The fourth week, he came over to me, he said, Atamagia. I said, Harav, Ifshar Lavi Chaver. Every single week. It was the year of the second Intifada, and I didn't leave Yeshiva the entire year. I went to Rav Sinai every single Shabbos. I went back for Havdalah after Shabbos. I learned with him in his house on Tuesday nights, Sefer Mei Marom, Farlap. And I came to realize that the smile that attracted me in the very beginning at family simchas, I've never gotten through a speech. Verses and kiddushes. So I'll do my best. Lesson number 1, I learned from Sinai. He used to tell a story of, he was a Holocaust survivor. He used to tell a story about standing in Auschwitz at the roll calls in the morning. And there was a middle-aged man, he said, who was standing next to him at the time. He was 13 years old or so, 13 or 14 years old. And the man turned to him, not a Rav, from man, but not a Rav, and said to him, there's a pasuk that we're all familiar with. The pasuk says, Kavel Hashem, Chazik v'yam mitzlibecha. V'kavel Hashem. So he asked, why does it say Kavel Hashem twice? Sinai didn't even have a Jewish education beyond the Rebbi that his father had hired to learn with him after school. He went to public school. And he said, I don't know why it says it twice. So the man said to him, because sometimes you're in a tough situation and you look to Hashem and ask Hashem for help, and it doesn't go. You don't see. Thank you. I learned from the best. And you don't see where the help is going to come from. And so the pasuk is telling us, Chazik v'yam mitzlibecha v'kavel Hashem, that you just have to try harder. You have to push yourself a little bit more and hope to Hashem. And that's how he lived his life. Rav Sinai came to Eretz Yisrael, which I'll talk about at the end of Eretz Hashem, after the war. And he learned in Yeshivas Chevron. After that, he got married. He was actually the first Rebbi. He started Yeshiva Rabbi Ifrah together with Rav Goldricht. After that, he was As our elder mentioned, he was the Rav of Ashdod. He left the Rabbanis when his first wife, passed away. He left the Rabbanis. He ended up in the Baseret with a Talmud of his, who was the Rosh Kol, Rebbi Cohen, Shlita. And he had a life. His parents were killed in Auschwitz. He had a life melumed with yisurin, terrible suffering, but he was the happiest person. Really, the happiest person that you could meet. It was an unbelievable thing. Okay, there's more stories about that. Number 2, in Auschwitz, that very same man who asked about Kavel Hashem, he said gave him the best shir that he had ever heard in his life. And he tells a story that there was one morning, early morning, the Germans, he didn't like when people referred to the Nazis. He felt that the entire German population was responsible for what happened in the Holocaust, so we would always refer to the Germans. And he said that one morning they came and took the clothing and the blankets of all the people in his bunk. They had a regular disinfection that they would wash the clothing and wash the blankets so that disease wouldn't run rampant in the camps, and then they would themselves get sick. So there was one day where they took everybody's clothing and blankets, and they said, we'll give it back to you later at night. And after a full day's work in the freezing cold in the winter, everybody was starving, they got the blankets back that night. Now the blankets were not blankets, as we all know. The blankets were whatever they had, thin sheet-like material with holes in it. And that's what they had to sleep in that night. And he said that they were all scared that they would freeze to death. That they would go to sleep that night and wouldn't wake up in the morning. And as he was getting into his bunk to go to sleep, so this same man called over to him from his bunk. The man was a middle-aged man in his 40s, and said to him, I need to ask you for a favor. What can I do for you, So he said, why don't you come sleep with me in my bunk, and we'll take both of the blankets, and we'll put both of the blankets over both of us, and the body warmth and the double blanket will make it through the night. So he said, okay. He did that, and they're lying down, and he's ready to go to sleep. And the man says to him, I have one more favor to ask of you. He said, I can't even give you the shirt off my back. What else could there be? So he said, every night before I go to sleep, I'm kovei in the Torah. And I just want to listen, as I'm learning. He was learning Maseches Beitza. Sinai said that was what he had learned before the war. That was the first thing that he learned, Maseches Beitza. That's what they learned in Prague. And the man sang the first Amud, Maseches Beitza Baal Peh, in Auschwitz, under 2 blankets, with this young boy sitting next to him. Eretz Yisrael. In the Vaseret, they said, I don't know what they do now, but at the time we shared the Beis Medrash with the Meretz Kol, or Sinai was the Rosh Kol, together with Rebbi Cohen. And they said Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, both at the night and in the morning. So I was Shana Aleph at the time. I went over to Rav Sinai and I asked him, Harav, Omrim Hallel b'Yom Ha'atzmaut. So he said to me, Ata sameach sheyesh lanu kan medina? I said, of course, So he says, Chayavim l'hodot, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chayavim l'hodot. So we say Hallel. And he used to tell every year a story. He used to explain a medrash. He used to explain a medrash every year on Sukkot. When I would try to visit him on Sukkot, he said the medrash says that the reason we have the holiday of Sukkot right after Yom Kippur is because in case that there was a gzeira of galus that was decreed upon Klal Yisrael on Yom Kippur, so we're makayim the gzeira by leaving our homes and going out into the sukkah. So he used to ask, we sit in the sukkah, he had a beautiful mirpesah, a beautiful view from the mirpesah. He said, Sukkot, look, it's comfortable, nice view, beautiful decorations, you got a nice breeze happening here. What kind of galus is that? This is a kiyum of the gzeira of galus? This is how we're going to avoid going into galus because we go out to the sukkah? What kind of galus is that? So he said, that's exactly what galus is. Galus is a sukkah, because a sukkah looks so comfortable and so beautiful and so stable and sturdy. And then all of a sudden, one storm comes and can wipe down the whole sukkah, and there'll be nothing left afterwards. And that's how he viewed everything in Chutz La'aretz, as obviously, as from his own experiences. And for a number of years before I decided to make Aliyah, I was terrified. I actually planned on living in America, and I was terrified. The biggest fear that I had of living in America was how I'm ever going to face Rav Sinai and tell him that I'm not making Aliyah. And I don't know if that's what did it, that tipped the scales, but Eretz Yisrael for him was the only place that a Jewish person can live, no offense. Tefillah. I forgot what time I started. I keep looking at my watch. I don't know how I started, but I'm trying to be brief. Two very short stories about Tefillah. Rav Sinai, again, as a child, 14, 15 years old in Auschwitz, he used to tell a story about how somebody had smuggled a pair of tefillin into the camp, and they hid it in a particular place, and everybody knew where it was. And if you got a few minutes, people would go take the tefillin, put on the tefillin, and then return it to the hiding spot. So he said there was a certain room. I forgot what it was used for. There was a room where the Jewish prisoners would work in that room, and he had taken the tefillin and he went in that room to go daven. So there was like a whole bunch of Jewish people, working there. And he was standing with his tefillin on, saying Shemona Esrei. And in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, a group of SS officers walked into the room. There was an inspection in the camp that day from like the higher ups in the SS. And the whoever was in charge of showing them around was taking them on a tour of Auschwitz. And he said, if an SS officer walks into the room that you're in and you don't take off your hat, you get shot in the head. That was it. And he's standing there with his tefillin on, davening Shemona Esrei, when they walked in. And, he wasn't sure what to do. Like, what do you do? What do you do? You can't hide it. It's too late, There's a lot of wraps around the arm. It takes time. So he was in the middle of Shemona Esrei, so he just decided to keep davening because that's really the only option that he had. And he said they came into the room, they stood there for however long they stood there, and it was like he was invisible. They just walked out. They didn't see him, as if he was invisible. Mamish like a Nes Nigla. That was one tefillah experience that he used to like to share. The second was after Auschwitz. He was on the death march, and he ended up in Mauthausen. And he said he got there, it was worse than Auschwitz. He was sure that he was not going to survive. He described the first night, they put them all in some big, wherever they put them, everybody came into one massive room, and they were lined up in lines. And he said they would count to three. The SS officer in charge would count to three, or blow a whistle, and when he said three, everybody had to fall on the floor, and that's where you slept for the night. And if you didn't fall on the floor exactly at three, there would be no place for you to fall. You'd fall on somebody else. That's how stuffed the room was. And he was sure he was not going to make it out. And he said he turned to Hashem and he said, I want to make a deal. I want to make a deal that if I get out of here alive, then I come to Eretz Yisrael, so then I'll dedicate my life to Torah. And that's obviously what happened. He said after he got married, he realized he had to make a parnasa. He wasn't sure what to do. He made this deal. He's going to dedicate his life to Torah. What should he do? He went to the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish told him. He said, the Gemara says, Sinai came with the Shiloh. The Gemara says in Brachos and Daf Lamed Hey that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says that a person should just learn all the time and not worry about anything else. And Harbe also, Kirashbi will also be Adam. A lot of people behave that way. It didn't work out well for them. And Rabbi Shmuel said that a person has to split his time, work and learn, and Harbe also Rabbi Shmuel will also be Adam, and that worked out for a lot of people. So he said, what should I do? I made this promise to Hashem that I'm going to devote my life to Torah, and now I'm going to have a family to support. And he asked the Chazon Ish what he should do. So the Chazon Ish said, you have to be medayik in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Harbe asu Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai will also be Adam. A lot of people did like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it did not work out for them. But there are a few people who did like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it did work out for them, and you'll be from those few, and you don't have to worry about it. Just to finish off, Rav Sinai, he knew Shulchan Aruch. It was unbelievable the way he knew Shulchan Aruch. He knew Shulchan Aruch cold. Anytime he would see you doing something that was not in line with the Mishnah Berurah, he used to have this one volume Mishnah Berurah in his makom, accessible at all times to point out and to show exactly what needs to be done in just about every scenario. and it started at this stage when he, in the war, his fascinating tshuvas that he wrote afterwards about different halachic shilas that came up during the Holocaust.